Good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you if you're on this call and anybody who will be watching the video afterwards. I've got a really great pleasure today to welcome Dara Goldberg, who is, well, she and I are going to be singing from the same hymn sheet entirely throughout the time that we spend together this afternoon, because we are both very definitely coming from the same place. And what we want to do, in fact, we were just discussing it, we want to sort of explore ideas together. She's in the USA, I'm in the UK, and we're living in different cultures, different cultural landscapes. And I find that fascinating. And I'd like to explore that with her, because she's coming from it from the perspective of what she's experienced in her environment. And when I started Look Fabulous Forever, as you all know, 11 years ago, I was coming at it from my UK perspective as an older woman who was resentful of some of the ways that I was treated, especially within the beauty industry. Now, I have put a big note at the top of my notes here to say questions. So what we'd like to encourage you to do is, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, either of us really, but particularly Dara, can you pop those down into the little box at the bottom where you can leave comments? And at the end, Amelia will look at those questions and then she'll ask us or Dara those questions. Okay, so I've remembered to say that. Don't forget to join in the conversation, which is really, really important. So my first question is, Dara, because I think you need to get to know her and where she's coming from, is to ask her how and why did she set up her organization, which is called the Endless Beauty Collective. So over to you, Dara.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Tricia. I think it's probably similar to what compelled you to, establish Look Fab Forever, in that I was, call it 42 at the time, and I kept it was being in beauty shops, but even more, it was being pounded with these messages that I'm getting older. That means my beauty is declining with age. I've got to avoid it at all costs. I've got to feel bad about it and not, look at the totality of aging, which is a beautiful thing. I think we stay beautiful forever, but I also think society, or certainly US society, wants us to think, it's all downhill from here. And the beauty industry in particular, or kind of the culture behind it, is that, we should just hide under a rock. And I got mad. I said, this is so not okay. And what was wonderful, and I imagine you feel this way, I know, but your viewers, I just said, we've got to change not just the narrative, but the way people think about this, about beauty and aging, and how they are synonymous. They're not mutually exclusive. And I found that there are tons of women who feel the way I do. And therefore, it was my job, a mission, but also a job, to really spend my days trying to shift this.
That's really interesting. You came to it earlier than me. You were in your early 40s. I was definitely in my mid 60s, so much earlier than me. But what's interesting is that you reached the same conclusion as I did. In a little while, I want to talk about culture, and I wonder if the cultural aspects of this were stronger at an earlier age for you than they were for me, because I can honestly say that I started to really resent it once I was only really being offered anti-aging cream, for instance, which was deeply, deeply annoying, like you, the messaging and so on and so forth. So I think that's one thing that we might look at in terms of the age at which it impacts you, because it seems to have impacted you very early, really, relatively speaking. Now, your Endless Beauty Collective. I've written down EBC, and I was trying to think what the E stands for. So it's Endless.
That's great.
Endless Beauty Collective. You set it up. So Yeah, brands is one of the things you do. You also build community. And I hope we've still got you. We're getting a bit of freezing on your screen, but hopefully it'll be all right.
Okay.
So my second question to you is really, when you're working with brands, what are you trying to do? What's your main message that you're doing? And how successful have you been with that?
Well, I should have said, like you did, there's two arms to the Endless Beauty Collective, or let's call it the EBC for short. And one is this consulting arm working with brands, and I'll elaborate on that in a minute. And then the other one is really, I didn't even have to do that much work to build this community of women because you're all out there and you're all looking for this. On the consulting side, it's there are so many brands. You know, there's brands like you where you got it out of the gate and you said, I'm going to give the messages women deserve. I'm not going to shame you for, everything you do. And it's who you are and it's the human behind your brand. Like it's literally you. And what I was finding from women is we want a human. We're not widgets, we're individuals. And so for brands, that's what made me develop the consulting arm to work with brands to help them understand that you can't just throw out words, and you certainly can't be throwing out words that demean us. So I work with them to shift their wording, but it's much deeper than that. I do training for their employees, like their marketing teams. And I'm not good at social media, but I work with people who are good at helping to shape that. And what I constantly tell them is what I just said, which is you've got to be human because that's how we feel a connection. And it's been, I thought the low hanging fruit for brands was going to be, was going to be the smaller, female founded, already pro age or age positive brands. And to really work with them to make sure the messaging was good. But what I found, and it makes so much sense, is they are too small to kind of go against the culture and to risk having not showing up in in our Google searches, right? Or not ours, but other women who are looking for anti-aging and stuff like that. And so the low-hanging fruit were actually the mid-level, I'll call them brands, which they're not the huge brands, but they're the brands who are curious, who are saying, wait, we don't want to be demeaning women, but we also have to be shrewd about, how we do this. And so I've been able to work with them to really kind of help shape what they say when they're speaking with people and in their marketing and communications. But it hasn't been easy. I want to be clear. Like it's been really difficult to break into it.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because I'm often invited onto platforms to speak to often to marketing people. And I'm always the old person in the room. I'm there to represent age. And one of the last ones that I did, one of the more recent ones that I did, was quite a big audience, probably 200 people, and they had a whole load of really amazing films. It was about diversity. They'd had a whole load of wonderful films about, diversity of skin color, ethnicity, disabled stuff, all of that stuff, and they'd invited me onto the panel, and they didn't mention age. So they had this film to introduce it to the audience. And I don't know whether you've seen, there's a Virgin ad, and the Virgin ad is almost going out of the way to include, minority groups. So you've got a punk rocker, you've got somebody with studs all over and everything, and it's to shift your perception of what a passenger is going to be on a Virgin flight. And then they go to the pilot, and it's a woman flying the plane. It's all that stuff. It's a brilliant ad. So they showed that, and there is age-related stuff in that. There is an older woman, and she's really enjoying her champagne and all that sort of stuff. But in their own film, they didn't include age. And I sat there on the platform, and I actually said, "Isn't it interesting that you guys have decided to put this conference on for marketing people to encourage advertisers, people in their marketing publications, to include diverse groups, and you didn't mention age. And they all sat there and went, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's like, it's because it's not on your radar. You don't
Yeah.
even think about it. And you know, one of the things that I say in that situation is I also use washing powder. You know, I don't just use Tenor Lady. What,
Right.
you know what
Right.
Tenor Lady is, you know, incontinence pads. It's like,
Right. Right.
we've got to advertise incontinence pads. Let's get some old women in, you know, that'd be great. But it's like, hold on. In fact, I don't use Tenor Lady. I do use washing powder. And that's what I'm sitting on these platforms saying. I'm a consumer too. Not only am I a consumer, but I'm a consumer with you know, a reasonable disposable income. And there's hundreds and thousands of us.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
We
totally
have,
support what you said there. You know, that the getting the message across is so hard because they don't think.
well, and we need to, we, the consumer, need to let them know with our wallets the purchasing power we have, right? Like if we close our wallets to the ones that are as ageist as it comes, eventually they'll feel it. I mean, that's our power, right?
Well, I do. I get these leaflets through the door sometimes, little booklets, and I look at the cover and I think there might be some nice clothes in here, but this is going straight in the bin. These people do not represent me. They're not talking to me. They don't want me. They don't want me. You
Yeah.
know, they haven't got me in their booklets. Although, you know, I might buy some of their stuff, but I'm not going to because they don't include me. I'd like to come on now. So brands is one side of it. All good stuff. Love to hear what you're saying and how hard it is, but also how important it is to get these messages across. But I'm also interested in the other side of it, which is what I've found as well, this community of women thing, you know, whereby you have absolutely found your tribe in a way. So tell me a little bit more about that in terms of what you're learning from those women.
I think it's been, as you said, so interesting because I had no idea how many women feel the way we do and are just kind of not sitting in the background meeting they're lazy, but sitting there saying, what can we do? How give us a vehicle or a platform to be more vocal. And I think there's three groups. There's women who are absolutely, what did you say, singing the same, from the same hymnal or speaking the same language and want to be out there and want to make a difference. And then there's women who are curious and are saying, what are these other women talking about? It's true. Why do I feel I need to get work done? And it's okay. If women choose to get work done, I'm not a judge or going to judge it. Just know why we're choosing, right? To get work done or to buy the anti-aging potions. And but that group of women, they're curious, they're listening, and they're shifting. That's what I'm seeing. And it's so exciting. And then there's women where, you know, they don't need to listen or don't want to listen, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the main point is that I had no idea how many women feel like we do and are activated, and we're looking or are still looking for ways to really shift the pendulum.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Those three groups, I can identify those three groups over here. The ones that you
Yeah.
are definitely talking to, the ones that are still, you know, curious about the idea of having work, as you say, having work done. You know, what if I had a bit of Botox? Oh, it'll only be subtle. It'll be a little bit of that, a little fine. You know, I can't. In a way, I'm not the police. I can't police what other people want to do. It's not my place. It's not for me. This is a personal choice, and who am I to say that there's something wrong with that? But my feeling very powerfully inside me is, why would I? Why would I do that? Why would I buy that message? And then, as you say, there are some people that just aren't interested anyway, in any way, shape, or form. But it does bring me your mention of work, which having work done, which is we understand what we mean by that, and that can be the most extreme form of surgery. Right down to the tiniest little, what they call tweakments now, where you think, oh, just a little bit of that or a little bit of the other. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering whether there is a considerable difference. This is where we come to culture, between the UK and the US, where I think it's far more ubiquitous and possibly more acceptable in a way. That over here, it's becoming a lot more acceptable, but in certain circles. What do you think?
Are you saying the work done piece, or changing?
The culture in the States, and we usually catch up with the States at some time down the line. So I'm wondering whether there is a greater pressure on women in the States, and a greater availability that you have over there with lots and lots of plastic surgeons and all that sort of stuff, to, if you move in certain circles, to almost assume that everybody will have work done. Do you think that's my perception? Do you think that's true?
I do think that's true. I think there's two pieces to it. In US culture, it starts so young, so young. I mean, I read this article where a bunch of women ranging in age from 16 to 28 were interviewed and said, how do you feel about getting older? And the 16-year-old said, I don't want to get older because I don't want to be ugly. Like, that is happening. And my daughters are 21 and 22, and they don't actively talk about it, but it's in their heads. They've been brought up in a culture that's saying the minute you show a line or tired spots or anything, it's downhill. And for me, the messages started getting really, really loud in my early 40s. And I know when you and I spoke before this, you were saying it tends to start later for women in the UK. And the piece about plastic surgery or any type of work done, I should have looked up the numbers, but the industry, the amount of money they make is off the charts. And they are sophisticated. They know how to get at our most vulnerable places, right? Like, it's really scary. It really is. And a minute ago, when I was talking about what I've learned from women, it's that the minute the light bulb goes off that society's been giving me these messages and telling me how to feel, and I have a choice. I don't have to believe them, and I can choose to look in the mirror and say, you know what, Dara, you look great. You're not 25. And I think you said it so well the other day, like, there's the personal mirror and then the societal mirror. And society wants us to look and say, gosh, you don't look 25 anymore. You look awful. But how about if I look at myself and say, Terry, you look great at 58, right? That's a whole different, and don't get me wrong, I have my bad days and all that. But that whole notion that it's our choice. And when you see the light bulb go off, that's what gives me hope that in the US, we can make baby steps towards change.
Yeah, absolutely. I just pick out on a couple of things that you said there early on. You said about these young girls equate old with ugly.
Yes.
Now that's a construct. That's a societal cultural construct. And it's to do with the fact that we are taught to associate, sagging flesh with something disgusting,
Right.
disgusting. And you do hear women say, oh, my flabby arms or my flabby bum or whatever. And I think you have to re-educate yourself quite strongly to be able to look in a mirror. I'm going to be 77 on Christmas Day. And it's like to look in a
Oh,
mirror and say, this is what a 77-year-old looks like. And it's fine, and it's
right.
fine. It's not ugly. It's who I am now and all of that. It's very acceptable. And just a second thing that I wanted to say is that I had a statistic the other day, which might shock some of the people watching this, is that the teen market now, they're all mad, because they're all on TikTok and stuff. They're all mad about makeup videos, but the biggest selling products to teenagers is expensive skincare.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Apparently that it's very competitive amongst teenage girls. I must ask my 15-year-old granddaughter about this. That they don't want cheap skincare. They don't want to go to Boots and buy their cheap stuff. They want
Hmm.
good stuff, and they think that if they invest in really expensive skincare when they're 15 or 16, it's going to make all the difference to their skin when they're old and ugly, which is what they're being told they'll be. So I find that shockingly horrifying. And
So horrifying.
we came to this aging realization at different times, possibly because of culture, but we were not being bombarded on TikTok and
Right.
Instagram and all the other places these kids reside permanently on their phones with these subtle and not so subtle messages, which create the dissatisfaction and the craving for, this stuff that we're talking about. So I feel sorry for them, but we can only, and we'll come to this in a while. Let's just talk, before we do that, let's just talk about role models, because I always think that what helps is having somebody in your life, and it could be a person, somebody well, or it could be just somebody that's on in the public eye, who just you just look at them and you say, I actually think they've got it right. So who are your role models? Who do you think are the best role models in the States? I'll tell you who I think the good ones are over here, but what would you say?
Well, I think at a, not famous people level, but a regular people level, I would immediately mention her name is Skylar Liberty Rose, and
Okay.
she's actually British but lives in the States, and she she gets it. She speaks it in such an accessible way, and she has built a platform, a community, and truly community, like you, where I can feel you embrace it as a community, not lecturing or anything like that. The other one I thought about, or immediately comes to mind, is she is British, so I guess I'm not naming US role models per se, but Justin Bassett, she runs Ageism is Never in Style. Do you know it?
I do.
She's,
I know Jacinth. I
oh, you
have.
do.
Yeah, I've been to her place and seen the clothes that she sells, and yeah, I know. I don't know her well, but I have met her. Yes, I do. I do know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And I truly think she's creating change because she's doing at scale what, when I see a beauty brand advertised on Instagram, with this huge look younger in 6 weeks, I actually send a direct message. And I mean, often it doesn't go anywhere, but sometimes they respond and say, you know, you're telling me I'm not okay. I say what we would say. She has access to these brands at a scale level, like L'Oreal, who, has done some inclusive campaigns, but still has a long way to go, and other brands. So I feel like she's moving the needle. And interestingly enough, there are many US brands that are working with her. So that's a good sign. I would also say, when it comes to famous people or people in the spotlight. Um, oh, she's British, Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
And what I love about her, I mean, is how outspoken she is, but she does represent that younger cohort of women who are saying, not
No.
happening, not now. I'm not even, 50 yet or whatever she is. And I think we need at that level, people with a voice, at the fame level, but then we need just regular people who are speaking their minds. And if you don't mind, I have a question for the viewers. And it's the term age is just a number. I can't stand that term. And here's why, because I don't see my age as just a number. I see it as my number. Like you talked about being 77, you are your version of 77. And to call it just a number takes away from the fact that, like, I have 58 years of wisdom, life experience, relationships. And so I'm curious if your viewers agree and if they're feeling that same sense of pride in our individual number. So,
Yeah, I agree with you about the age is just a number thing. It's always annoyed me intensely. But I think people say it because they just want to say, look, we can do anything, whatever our age. It's a shorthand way of saying that. It's not getting into the really deep philosophical meaning of age is just a number. Um, I I don't like it because what to me it means is that when you say age is just a number, but it's a very specific number.
right.
If you're 15, that's not just a number. That's a very specific number. My daughter's
Mm-hmm.
about to turn 50. She's 50 next week. And, having a daughter of 50 is quite significant for me. But for herself, you move from your 40s into your 50s. And I always think that's a very sort of seminal moment in lots of ways. It was for me. I was probably extremely happy by the time I reached 50. My 40s had been quite traumatic because I got divorced. And by the time I reached 50, I was in the warm shallows again. I was very, very happy. So it's like it wasn't just a number, it was a significant milestone in my life. And I think that age is always every birthday is a significant milestone in your life, but it's one to be celebrated. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
alive, for goodness sake. you know
Yes.
Good. I'm like
Yes.
fact, So we should never ever lose sight of that. Totally agree with you about Kate Winslet. In fact, she was on my mind when I said about role models. I'll also
Oh.
mention Emma Thompson,
Mm.
who is
Yes.
another Brit who is very outspoken about work and not having work done and all that sort of stuff. She's in Hollywood. She's a successful
Mm-hmm.
actor, and it's like she's a good embodiment of that no nonsense, get over yourself stuff around aging, which is what Kate Winslet is as well. I love her. She's no BS, and I like that approach. I think that's what we need and want. We need these women who are incredibly beautiful, as is Kate Winslet and Emma Thompson, to speak up and say, look, guys, I'm getting older, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think one or two roles that Kate Winslet, I saw her in Lee, the film Lee, which is about Lee. She was in the Lee Miller, photographer during the Second World War. And she's completely, in that, because she's out in a Jeep in army fatigues with no makeup on in the Second World
Wow.
War. She
Yeah.
looks, she looks rough, but in a good way. You know,
Yeah.
she would have been. That's what Lee Miller would have looked like if she was in the middle of some. She got bullets whizzing over her head. She's not going to be standing there with with a compact powdering her nose, and she
Right.
wasn't. In fact, she was just slugging a lot of alcohol. But hey, it got her through. Anyway, love. I love your role models. I think you're absolutely right to name those. Um, I also, the next question, I think we might have discussed this already in a way, but you said to me the other day when we were chatting, I want this to be a legacy for my daughters. So you've got daughters in their early 20s. I've got one daughter's 47, the other one's about to turn 50. I also want Look Fabulous Forever to be a legacy for my daughters. And I'm sure your daughters have already benefited from the Endless Beauty Collective, because my two who work with me, Anna said to me the other day, I have absolutely no fear of aging. None,
Oh,
because I could, and she gets very cross with her friends who are,
mhm.
they'll turn 50. All her friends are turning 50 at the moment. And she
Yeah,
said, the ones that go, oh my God, I'm so old, I'm 50. And she said, I feel like shaking them and saying, of course you're not old, because you've got, my mum's 26, 7 years older than me, and she's still going strong. You've got years.
yeah, and
So
beautiful, right?
I hope, how do you want the world to change for your daughters? Because I do want it to change for mine.
I want to get to the day, and it won't happen in my lifetime, but I aspire to the day where, just like in other cultures, and there are many, we look forward to aging.
Yeah.
Aging is a beautiful thing, and we're revered for it. And I really think we can and we should look to other cultures where, I mean, they may refer to them in a different way as your elders or whatever the terminology is, but it's really incredulous, or I'm incredulous that we don't, that my daughters fear it. And
Mhm.
I do hope and think I've been a good, influence on them. And they're so supportive of my work. Like they'll share it and it's really wonderful. But they're not looking forward to aging. They're not, and I don't mean looking forward to it like wishing time away, right? We want our 20s, 30s, 40s. Um, but I tell them at every turn 50 was my 50s have been the best decade so far. I mean, hands down. And my husband, who's only 4 months younger than me, we had 100th birthday party to celebrate our 50th. So I hope your daughter does something like that. Because the whole point is it's different stages. And I think the other piece society does to us, this isn't specific to beauty, but it is, especially women in aging, is we're taught to think that growth and milestones are reserved for the young, right? You like whatever they may be. But we have growth spurts and hit new milestones our whole lives. And the idea that nope, once you hit 40 couple, there, you're done with milestones and growth spurts and changes. So I think that's a piece of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the 100 years thing. My daughter's turning 50. Her husband is 50 on the 20. She's the 26th of November. He's the 26th of December, 1 month apart. So they were
Oh,
born 1 month apart, and they met at university. And so they're having a joint birthday party. And
oh, good.
yes, I think they should celebrate it as 100 years. I like that idea. I'm going to suggest that to them. I think that's what
Oh,
they should.
good.
But the other thing I wanted to say, apropos what you were saying, is that we need to get across the message much more widely that there is a U shape of happiness in aging. And
Mhm.
this is across, what's interesting about this is across countries, East, West, it's across cultures, it's across income groups and social class groups. It's across the board. It's not just rich people or just poor people or whatever. This is universal. And the
Mhm.
shape of happiness is that we start happier when we're children. Then life gets tougher and tougher and tougher as we enter the world of work and mortgages and responsibilities and having children. And there's a real lower part of that U bend, which you get in toilets, of course, but there's that low bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, that low bit, and you're in the U bend of your toilet, and then gradually you come out of it until you reach a much happier place. And
That's beautiful. Yep.
so it's U-shaped. So you go back to that happy place that you were as a child. And I think I'm definitely happier than I've ever been right now. And it's not to do with any of the other things that are going on in my life. I think it's because I am inside my own skin. I'm fine. It's like I'm not trying to struggle to be anything that I'm not. And
Right.
that sense of completeness and also at oneness, you can only get to when you're a lot older. I think you're struggling to do that for most of your life. It's like a chrysalis, a caterpillar emerging. And I'm not saying I'm now a butterfly, but I do feel like I have emerged. It might take a while to complete that emerging, but you know what I mean? It's just a different feeling, but it's a
Yeah.
very, very nice feeling, and I don't think I've got anything to prove anymore, really, in lots of ways. I still have ambitions. I still have things I want to achieve. I still have things I want to do, but I don't think I have to prove anything to anybody anymore. And that's a really good place to be, because for a lot of my life, I felt I had a lot to prove. And this is what happiness is, and this is why you get it when you're older. I think you just feel differently.
Yeah.
Well,
And I do think, it's important to say it's not all fun and games. Like we're not painting a picture of 100% bliss, but the totality of it, and I love your U shape or U curve. I like to say, I like to call myself unembarrassable now. I mean, I used to fear, what if I do it wrong? Or what if I blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, I'm doing it, right?
yeah, you get braver for sure, and you care much less about what people think. Um, do you think, since you started the Endless Beauty Collective, do you think the dial has shifted? Do you see in those businesses that you work with and the community that you're engaged with, do you see the dial shifting?
I see incredible curiosity. I see that our collective voices are being heard. I don't, we have a ways to go before the numbers, they feel threatened that they're going to lose market share if they don't change. But we are getting somewhere and we're raising a consciousness and a curiosity. And that's where it starts, right? And, we mentioned this earlier. We, all of us, have the power to make them feel the pain points if we really change our purchasing habits, right?
No, totally. I mean, we call it the grey pound over here, and there's no question that we have purchasing power. And I think we need to use it more. I think we need to be more vocal than we are. Just
Mm-hmm.
I try and be as vocal as I possibly can be, but I am one lone voice, and I do my best. But if everybody collectively, you're a collective, everybody collectively put their voices together, we'd become very noisy. And I think we sometimes accept more than we should.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have agency and do stuff. I'm quite sure about that. And how optimistic are you about the future in terms of we're all living longer lives. We are living. We're living in a way that we weren't, the last generation was. That something came into my head just then, you probably saw it come into my head, which was that you're at the moment, and this is not a tangent we should go down really, but in America it feels like you're being ruled by a gerontocracy, which is quite interesting. That we don't need to go there, but
Okay.
you possibly have, or you're going to have, and you have had in Biden, and you now have in Trump, two very, very old men. And they are the most powerful people in the world. So it's not like older people aren't visible, but they are a particular kind of older person, of course. And we can't get into that. I don't want to get into that. But there is this. There are far more older people in the world than there have ever been. That's what
Right,
I'm
right,
trying to say. So should
right.
we be optimistic about the future in terms of shifting the dial around the conversation around aging, do you think?
I do think so is my first answer. I think, and again, I'm not going down that road either, but just to say they're men. And we have a long ways to go before we'll see women in top positions or that it won't still be hard to break the glass ceiling. But putting that aside, I think I am optimistic. I think the gates are open. We're not going back. I mean, again, talking about beauty and aging here. And the fact that we're living longer and it's the being vocal, and I see some of your viewers posting in the chat about their age, and if we take it, we have the power to keep going, and it's about absolutely supporting each other. And I know it's a cliched term, but being a sisterhood and lifting each other up and talking to anyone who will listen, boys, girls, men, women, everybody, about our thoughts and how we see things. Because sometimes it's just I never thought about that before, right? And that's the minute that happens, there is no going back. So I am optimistic.
Good. I am optimistic as well. I can't live in the world as a pessimist. I have to live in the world as an optimist, and I do believe that information, getting the messages out there, all of that will help. And even if it's just one person that you change their mind, that's enough. Take it a step. It doesn't have to be a whole, population. I'm going to come to Amelia and just find out if we've got any questions. I'll give you the floor at the end, Dara, just to sum up. So, Amelia, comments or questions that you want to just put out there?
We've got no questions, but I can read out some of the lovely comments. So Liz Vardy hit 70 next week, and she says, "Bring it on. I rejoice in each passing year, and I say to the scared women, for that is what they are, grow up and grasp the nettle. Age is just a number, a powerful number full of hope, strength, and camaraderie." And from Wendy, we've got, "I'll be 80 in May and just rejoice that I'm still around when so many people much younger than me aren't. Great discussion, Tricia and Dara." And Sandra said, "I'm 80 next month, and during my 70s, I felt more comfortable in my own skin than any time before it. We only have one life, embrace it."
Perfect. Well, that's a lovely summary of what we've been talking about. That's absolutely gorgeous. And happy birthday, Liz, for next week. You're one of our shining stars on Super Troopers. So, so very happy birthday to you. So, Dara, your final sort of summary, and then we'll close the call.
Well, I want to thank you, Tricia, for stepping out, early. I mean, 11 years ago, when no one was talking about this, the wording pro-age was something you helped originate. So you are my role model. You're our role model, and I don't mean that in a solicitous way. I truly, genuinely mean that. So I want to thank you for being not just the person you are, but the brand that you are. And I also want to thank the viewers and the women in your community, and let all of us know that there's simple steps we can take. You can be very shy and still be moving the pendulum by one, we keep saying it, but buy only from brands who revere us. And if you do want to use your voice, like when you're in I don't know what your beauty shops are there, like here at Sephora and Ulta. When you're in the beauty shops and you see a huge anti-aging collection, just let the saleswoman know, it's a shame that these beauty brands are telling us that. And look on her face and see if you've kind of lit or some kind of flash of, I never thought about that. And I guess that's it. I love this conversation.
Yeah, I loved it too, Dara. I hope nobody on this call is going into beauty shops because they're buying all their makeup from Look Fabulous Forever. So, they're extremely unlikely to be shopping in, beauty counters.
Yes.
That may not be true. Anyway, I agree 100% with what you've said, and I raise my voice whenever I can, and in every situation to bang the drum for us older women, because we're all amazing and fabulous, and you certainly are, Dara. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who's come in on the call for joining us. It's always nice to know there are people out there listening, and yes, big thank you to you, and
thank you.
I'd love to hear the US perspective as well, because I find that fascinating. So bye bye everybody, and thank you, Dara, again. Bye bye.